Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the QT2 podcast series, My Life as a Pro. In this series, we are talking to current and former professional and elite triathletes from QT2 Systems. Our featured guest today is Anne Basso. Welcome, Anne.
Hi, Rem, and hi, everyone. Thanks for joining in with me and listening to my story.
Yeah, thank you. We were chatting a little before we got started today, and you have a really interesting story. So thank you so much for being on and sharing it with everyone. So I want to start because before there's an elite, there has to be an age group or there has to be a first race, right? So I want you to kind of take some step back and talk a little bit about how you came to triathlon and sort of your progression through the age group ranks.
Okay. When I started college, there was a triathlon club, and I had stopped swimming for 2 years. I was elite swimmer, and I had stopped. And so I saw triathlon. I was okay. That can be a nice way to get back in sport. And so I had a lot of fun with the club, going to the collegiate championship. And for me, being a swimmer, anything that was over 400 meters was very long. But chit-chatting with everyone, I ended up doing half marathon in training and racing my first marathon pretty quickly. And I just realized that I loved long distance. And at first I raced locally, and then as I got stronger and more into the sport, I started seeing Ironman and the 70.3 distance. I was staying away from Ironman. I believed I needed a lot more training hours, and I wanted to build into it progressively. So I started racing 70.3s a lot, mostly down in Florida and Maryland. And I just ended up racing faster each year, and and I just loved the ambiance in triathlon. That was different from swimming, but I simply loved it. So it was just the banquet before, preparing your stuff, and having 3 sports to prepare. I just loved it.
Okay. So, but racing as an age group athlete and getting faster doesn't necessarily mean you go to the next step. So what did it take for you to go from, I mean, you have to start winning your races, right? Getting top of the podium to earn your elite license.
Yeah, and I did. So I started winning my age group, but then also overall, and I started quite the 70.3 distance at that time started to become more popular. So you had the long course ITU, where I did a podium there at the World Championship, and I also did the 70.3 World Championship where I podiumed again. So but even though I was placing in the top at that moment, I just wanted to always beat my time and be the best I can be at each races. It's when I graduated, I wanted to go to Australia and train a little bit more. So I did find a triathlon squad. And with the coach there, he said that I needed to step up. And he basically asked me to ask my elite card. And so I raced elite when I was in Australia. And that's how I made the switch.
So while we were talking before we went live today, you mentioned a race in Claremont while you were still an amateur. Can you talk about that a little bit?
The one in Florida.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I just it was very hot and humid, and uh, I just had a solid swim, and then the bike was my strength. So I rode in the front, and then the run was super humid, and I struggled through it, but there was another in my age group that was very strong too. She came from swimming, and we battled the run, so that we both earned our pro card actually that day. And I actually continue racing with her after that, so that was a great experience.
And then, so then you moved to Australia. You joined a triathlon team there.
Yeah.
Yeah. And
the team was a mix, so amateur, short course, long course, all people that qualify for the Olympics and placing at the Olympics, and then so it was a great mix. Young ones that wanted to become one day Olympians, so, and just regular workers coming and loving triathlon. So it was a very fun environment to be with, and so that's where we all went to the Australian Championship, and we watched. There was short course, long course, and I did the long course. So that first race as an elite was pretty intimidating. Very strong swimmers. And in my flight to Australia, I had read a book about all species in Australia. So obviously the sharks. And I just had that panic moment in the swim. The lifeguard told me, "Are you okay?" I was like, "I
no.
can't stop with that." So I was probably last out of the swim, which is strange because I came from swimming. But again, I was a butterflyer, and I am so, and it was short course. So racing open water was different for me, and a lot of emotions and stress probably. So that first loop on the bike, I was still kind of shaken. But then I saw all the team and the coach, and I think it was 4 loops or something like that. I just rode probably the best that I ever rode that day. And then my run was the same. So I ended up doing a very nice place and having a lot of fun.
That's good. So it must have been a little disheartening when you came out of the swim and saw everybody's bike already gone.
Yeah.
Right? Like I have some catching up
Again,
to do.
I wasn't alone, so it was and the coach obviously gave me his trust because he's the one that said race elite. So I saw him, and I think I kind of had to gather my thoughts. But as I started cycling and doing the sport that I was very confident as a triathlete, I just ended up focusing on my controllable and having fun on my bike, and then being around athletes that I've always admired and be around them on the run course. I just ended up having like a solid run too, and kind of focusing like I was on the track doing my workout and being pushed. So I really had a blast and loved every moment after
Okay.
that swim.
All right. So that was the beginning of your professional career. How did you, so over the, and what about what year was that? Do you remember?
Oh, yeah, 2009.
2009. Okay. So you've been racing on, I
Yeah.
mean, the highest level now for 14 years going
Now
into
it's
15th
at
year.
first it goes slow, and then suddenly it adds up. It's strange. And it is strange because at some point, especially when I was amateur, because I was always placing, I had a lot of a good friend, but they were, I guess, fan too, and they always said, "You're so young, you're so young," and then suddenly you elite, and then you focus more on racing, and then suddenly it's like, okay, you have many years. So it kind of goes from both ends right away. So, but yeah, a lot of race and experience along the years for sure.
So how did you go about picking what races you wanted to do?
So it was mostly with it's always what I love, and it's I always recommend that to anyone when they ask me that. So I chose race because I wanted to do the race. And after, because I've been with training squads, it was also where the squad would go at the same time. So it did become maybe a little bit uncontrollable because I did ended up racing a lot at some moments and not really especially having a structure of choosing races.
And how did you, so we were talking about you racing in Australia at some point though, I mean, you moved to the US and you started training with QT2. Can you talk about that transition a little bit?
Yeah, in between there was I came back to the US. I did a few 70.3s, and then I also had opportunities in Europe. So I raced in Europe, and then I was with another pro squad based in Switzerland, but we ended up coming back in Mexico. And then Mexico racing in US. And at one point, it was a little bit too much, or I don't know how to explain, but I had to stop racing. There's probably it's probably called burnout or mental health nowadays. I don't know, but I ended up wanted to focus on my sport, but in a different way, and I went to coaching. And at that moment, Trevor wanted also a new coach and attached to a different training philosophy. And this is how we read and got into QT2 and meeting Jesse and being introduced to QT2. So on my, for me, it was as a coach first, and I followed Trevor as an athlete. So I ended up going to the QT2 Pro Camp and being mentored by Jesse to become a coach, and eventually mentored by Jesse to return to racing and trust that I could be competitive and enjoy my passion and still be doing it. And it wasn't like black or white that I had to stop everything, but rather continue doing it.
So I want to back up a little with that. So, I mean, you said that you did some reading on Jesse and that led you to want to contact him. What was it that you read, or did you see in your reading that made him interesting, that made you think, okay, well, this could be a good move for us?
Well, it's our transition from Lindsay to I. Always been a big admirer of Lindsay, and it's not because she is in QT2. Like when I was age grouper, she was all I believe she probably was fairly young and doing really well. A great spokesman, sportsmanship. She has a lot of qualities. And one day I just read an article from her talking about Jesse, and I liked everything that she said. Basically, spoke to me. So, and then I had signed up for the USAT level 1 coaching, and Jesse was the coach presenting, and so I connected both. Like at first I didn't really remember, and I said, I think Lindsay spoke about Jesse, but basically it answered all my questions. It connected with my own principles, Trevor's principles too, as an athlete. And so I spoke more with Jesse at that presentation, and I said, would you like to coach Trevor? And he said yes. And then he invited us at the pro camp. And so I went. I was not an athlete at that point, and he mentored me as a coach there, and I really loved it. And this is how I started my journey as a coach. And then not that year, but the year after, going at camp, he kind of always introduced, go swim or go run. And I started doing it a little bit, and just loving it again, as a beginner again. And so that year I just started training a little bit more, focusing my QT2 principle, my heart rate zones, and focused on my controllable. And I signed up for a 70.3, and I ended up surprising myself. And then Jesse continued to coach and mentor me to continue in that direction and enjoy my passion. And I ended up making again the step toward Ironman racing, which had been very difficult when I had stopped. So to come back to Ironman racing was a big step forward in stepping away from the fears that I had created. So
Okay. So I mean, when you came to QT2 in 2015, so you'd been racing on the elite level for 6 years at that point.
yes.
You just said, I'm done. That's it. Love triathlon, but I'm done racing. I'm going to coach. I'm going to get my certification. This is where my focus. And you came in as a coach, and Trevor, your husband, right?
Yes.
Came in as an athlete. And so you were there, you were learning. And I mean, I'm so curious with what it was like. I mean, Jesse watched you obviously and gave you time and patience and just encouraged you to just start
Yeah,
finding
I
yourself as
mean
an
that
athlete again,
that
or
is an interest. I believe we saw also we were a lot of races that QT2 was that year before I stopped. So maybe Jesse has another eye on us when we didn't see him. That was at the time he was a lot on races, so he probably saw Trevor and I racing. And now that I am a coach, I do, when I go out and train, I see athletes, and sometimes I see the younger one and I say, oh, she's probably going to be strong. Like, she has that determination that you can see with your own experience and passion. So I guess he had that eye, and so when I connected with him, I think we just had a great connection. And again, we joined on our principles. We have a lot of the same principles, and he's also very detail oriented like I am. And I believe that's something I had lost in the 6 years prior to that. There was no no structure like his. And I'm a very structured person, so it really helped me to gather my life, my passion with triathlon and my work ethics. And I think it helped me to create my own belief and to trust my process of evolving in life, basically. And I think that's we don't speak about that, but I think we both have a trust in each other, and I think that's all you always bring the best of anyone. So
Okay. So why don't we, I mean, now you've been racing as a pro for 14 years or so. Do you have some moments that stick out to you as being like things that you remember that you kind of put away in that special, the special spot?
The first one is my first 70.3 World Championship. And I was lucky because it was clear water. At the beginning, it was always clear water. So I had raced it as a age grouper. Never thought I would be on that start line. Because of my age group, I was always behind the pro and hearing the helicopter, the presentation, and again, I'm a big I love sport fan. So I was fan of all the women racing in front of me. And so that first year where I was around them, it was just very emotional and special. Once you start the race, then you're laser focused. So, but that gathering of setting up the transition, going to the start line, that was definitely one of my best moments. Then the other moments that for me, it's always when I went to a race that I didn't think I was capable of doing. And the Clearwater was a little bit the same. I never thought I would be capable of racing pro one day. So that was my first challenge. Then it was doing race in the Alps, because in Europe it's pretty big to race a long course with a lot of elevation. And that's something I never had put on my list, because I think it was just because I was intimidating by those races. So when I had my coach signing me up for those races, I was like, okay, we'll see. And it's the best moment because I always ended up doing very well and much better than I ever thought. Other moments, so that's epic races are on my top list of memorable moments. All the Ironman where everything, it's not like everything worked 100%. I actually don't have that Ironman where I can say my swim was perfect, the bike was perfect, and the run was perfect. There's always one that is not good. And then I end up putting like a very strong performance on the other one. I'm very well rounded. I believe, like I can't say I'm a swimmer, cyclist, or runner. It depends on the day. And so I never had that Ironman 100% on all three. But the one where I overcome and I stick with the controllable and I go in the 9 hours, that's always one that I'm very proud of. And that counts as, because I think being elite it's a journey. So there's not like just one moment for me anyway. It's the experience that I have had. And also being in a pro team. So it was mostly for me, it was the training squad and going with the coach. But the experience to be around top athletes, sharing training, daily training together, going to races together, and it's a great sportsmanship again. And I really love that experience I had, and I will do it again for sure.
Okay. So, yeah, well, which is the other question is, I mean, you're still in it, so it's hard to say, would you do it? But I'm curious, like, so if we go back in time and you say, I mean, you first started racing when I mean, how old were you when you did your first
That's
kart race?
the question.
Can I ask, or am I not allowed to ask that question? You were young.
Probably 25 or so. Yeah, I was 25 years old or something like that, if I
So
did my math correctly.
I feel like, I mean, when I look back at the decisions I made when I was young, younger than that, even I thought I knew everything back then. But
Yes.
clearly now I look back and be like, oh my God, all the things I didn't know. Maybe it was better if I didn't. But would you tell, like now looking back and seeing the journey and the wealth of experience that you've gained over time, what would you tell that young Anne who was trying to decide whether this was, the right direction to go?
Well, I thought through this one, and the best answer I can say, know your why. It's the why is very important. Why you're doing it, why you're doing it that way, why you're choosing. So every time you can identify your why, I think you're going to be on a good course and journey, and you're always going to move forward that way.
So what's your why?
My passion. I simply love sport and triathlon. I think mixes the endurance that I is my strength and my peace. Yeah, my peace of mind. I find peace when I go run. I find peace when I do very long swims or I go out on my bike. So triathlon end up to be the right mixture for me. I love the different elements of it, and I think it really helps me to identify myself and builds the trust in myself too. And I always say I'm a better person when I do triathlon, a lot more efficient, and it's just, and so this is my why. This is my why to go forward. And one of the reason also when you race, it's be the best you can be. You're going to be competitive, but in the end, it's to be the best you can be, and that is my why again. So.
Mhm.
I actually had an athlete coming to me and saying that it was very important for him, the why, and he's not the only one, but the way he described the why, I saw there was many purpose with that why, and I had identified to that. So I wish I knew when I was younger to always really stick to it.
Yeah. I don't know if we know so much back when we were young, then we'd be, yeah, wise before our time. I think going through it, and because you had that point in time where you stopped, I mean, and you had to understand who you were to restart. I think, that seemed like it was a pretty important time in your life.
Yeah, and there was a emptiness for sure when I wasn't racing. But I think in some way it was important and to re-put everything together. Probably because I didn't know my why completely. So to have that emptiness, I think helped reconnect, and also being, again, I come back to QT2 and being around Jesse and having those people around you that can help you answer your why and stick with it. It obviously is very important.
Mhm. And when we were talking before we went live, about your most memorable moments, you said something that stuck with me, which was you said that every time you did something that you didn't think you were capable of, it was a memorable moment for you. And I really like that. I mean, because it wasn't about the time you got in your marathon or like the place you were on the podium. It was about doing something that was like bigger than what you thought that you could do. And that, I don't know if you
And I
can talk
actually
about that a
thought
little more.
about that question because when you're an athlete, that's the first thing we are going to ask. So what that we expect is going to be saying, oh, it's when she's which race did she win, or which race did she podium. I did have those races, but it's in the end, the one that I had the most emotions, it's exactly the one that you just said. It was when I saw that I was capable to do more than what I thought before the start line. And
Yeah.
sometimes it's not when you have the fastest race, or it's different elements that brings that going beyond yourself and seeing that you can do more than you thought. But yeah,
Yeah.
that's exactly the one I had the most emotion for sure.
Yeah, and you also said something just in terms of working with Jesse over time, which was that he helped you see yourself from the outside a little bit and to see your accomplishments, how much you actually have done with the sport.
Yes, and it's very true. I think until I met Jesse, I never saw myself. I never saw what I was doing. Yes, I was racing and going to those places, and I was doing a lot of things, and I was racing a lot too at some point, but I never had that capability of seeing it. And yes, with Jesse, I stepped out. I don't know what he did. Like, I cannot say there was a magic recipe or something, but and even talking and even seeing my transition, like we said, it's since 2009 to now. So at some point there was many years that were all the same. And then suddenly when I grew within QT2, I definitely feel, I guess, more mature. And I do see the things that I'm doing. And I don't know if we bring a structure and an organization, but that's the way for me. I think it ended up being. It was to reorganize everything, my training, my the way I see a racing season, the way I see a training with a purpose, going to a race with a purpose. And I think putting all that structure for me has helped me seeing myself as a third person. And I think it's actually very important to be able to do that as an athlete, but usually what works for an athlete usually works in life. So, and I think that's the biggest thing that I've learned since I am with QT2. And obviously my first year in QT2, I was not as organized and seeing myself as a third person. It was a process, but that's the process that I have learned and that I have in some way fulfilled. And it helps me being motivated to find a race that I have the time to go and prepare and enjoy being around athletes and sharing that moment. So yeah, I think the structure, putting the passion in the mix, and seeing what you can do, because obviously as triathlete we are making sacrifice. I mean, it's a big time consuming sport, but at the same time I think when we have that time for ourselves, we do become better person and more organized too. So in the end you end up giving more at the same time, and that's balance that I have definitely found in QT2.
Yeah, that's great. Anything you feel like we haven't talked about so far that you wanna say?
Yeah. No, well, I guess summarizing it, I'm racing because I love it. Definitely go and follow your athletic capabilities. And remember that at the beginning, it always starts with that passion within you, and definitely give the best and go for it. Because every year it's again, you have to sign up for the race and show that you have that elite status. So you always have that question, do you want to continue and do it again? And I think people should perceive it if that's what they have inside of them, and go for it.